Next video. History's worst Olympic marathon in a nutshell. Lock it in.
With roots spanning 2,800 years to ancient Greece, the Olympics have become the pinnacle of athletic achievement, with the awarding of a gold medal being seen as internationally equivalent to—
And why his Speedo so low? It reminds me of low-waisted jeans. I hate low-waisted jeans. I've never liked them. They're always gross to me. It feels, whenever I see an image or just a woman wearing low-waisted jeans, it just makes me feel like they're wearing jeans from when they were like a kid and they found them in their closet and they were like, oh, these will still fit. And so they have to like sag them a bit so they're like wearable. I don't know. They just look weird. I've never liked them.
To winning a Nobel Prize, Pulitzer Prize, or my parents' approval. The world's best from all walks of life meet to prove their excellence in humanity's greatest cities. Athens, Paris, St. Louis. Yep, the third Olympic Games and America's first outing as host took place in
St. Louis, Missouri. Why the f did they choose it there?
St. Louis in 1904. But early 20th century St. Louis doesn't quite have the sex appeal of Athens or Paris. So how does one spice it up a bit? That's right. Rat poison, brandy, and human experimentation.
Human experimentation? Wait, what? The Olympic torch relay isn't ancient. It was started by the Nazis. Was it really?
Originally, the 1904 Games were to be held in Chicago, but that same year, the World's Fair was celebrating the centennial of the Louisiana Purchase in St. Louis. What would be the world's largest fair to date had fascinating exhibits like the first ever X-ray machine, the radio phone, and all your favorite different looking people on display. Remember kids, you can't have a fair without a healthy dose of racial superiority. Even with indigenous mud throwing contests being the crowd drawers they are, they didn't want to have to compete for spectators. So they threatened to overshadow the Olympics with their own sporting events, and successfully moved the Olympics to St. Louis. The first debacle in the clusterfuck that was the 1904 Olympics was the issue of location. With them lazy Wright boys not having double-decker Boeing 747s out yet.
Were there pro athletes then? Like, when did they... we watched a video on that. When did pro athletes... 1986. That's so fucking late. So it was just like random people competing.
Foreign athletes getting the St. Louis...
A random guy that was like a farmer was just like, yeah, I'm going to sign up for the Olympic Games. I think I'm going to run me the marathon. Fuck no. Fuck no. You want me to run the 26 miles? What fucking... How cracked out do you have to be as a... Like, you're not even a pro. You're just a dude. And you could have fucking chosen to try and get good at any event, and you're like, I can run for a long time. What are you fucking... Who's that guy? The box of chocolates, dude? I forget his fucking name. Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks' character. Forrest Gump.
Lewis involved a lengthy boat trip, followed by a 1,000-mile train ride. Combined with the fact that the Russians and Japanese were having a disagreement at the time, a measly 12 nations showed up, with only 62...
There was only 12 nations that showed up. What country is that? Only 12 nations showed up for the 1904 Olympics? Wow, that's kind of a skill diff here, chat. 526 athletes from the United States. Because it was held in the U.S. 6 British. What is that, New Zealand? I don't know what country that is. 8 athletes. This one's South Africa. Oh, this was South Africa at the time. 1 French guy. 2 Swiss. That's Australia? That's Australia?
2 of the 651...
Wait, this is Australia? This is not Australia. Oh, Austria.
Athletes hailing from outside of North America. But
That's Australia. That black and yellow flag. Kashubia. A region in Poland.
The eye of the storm centered on the iconic marathon event. The 1904 Olympic Marathon was more freak show than showpiece. Ironically, more fitting for the fair-like atmosphere than a...
I mean, that's how I envision every Olympics before they allowed pro athletes. Because what's the point in competing? Like, you're going to pay... Are you paying... Is your country paying for you to go compete? Like, is Britain paying people to fucking take a boat to Missouri in 1904?
Prestigious sporting event.
It seems just kind of like a ragtag tradition at the time. in like 1904, like just random people.
The typical morning start time, this one was held in the afternoon, where temperatures soared to 92 degrees Fahrenheit, with humidity in the 90s. This means the race took place with a heat index of a scorching 135 degrees Fahrenheit. For context, ideal marathon conditions are around 41 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. That's like...
Oh, why? So it's your body heat? Yeah, that's what your PC runs at. So your body doesn't overheat?
Replacing your CPU cooler with a tungsten arc welding torch. Only 32 runners from 4 nations participated in the race. A few were experienced runners, having won or placed in past marathons, but the majority were misfits. Of these misfits...
What, do you think it was their first marathon? Like, they just picked a dude on the side of the street and said, hey, you're going to run the marathon today.
We have 2 South African Tswana tribesmen visiting St. Louis for a certain World's Fair exhibit, who ran the race barefoot. 10 Greeks who had...
Running? I don't think I could run a mile barefoot. Your feet would be fucked. 26 miles? There's no way they finished. 26.2 miles barefoot? Were they running on concrete or dirt?
Had never run a marathon a day in their lives, and Cuban national...
No way, dude. There were people that just never ran a marathon that got into the Olympics.
Felix Carbajal, a former mailman who demonstrated his running skills throughout Cuba to raise money. He was even reported to have ran the entire span of the island. Once he raised enough, he bought passage to the US and arrived in New Orleans. What's
so
this
he really wanted to go
contest? Run that. Dice. One in. Oh, well, I suppose I could spare $1 or $2.
Dame los dados.
Upon arrival, Felix lost all of his money on a game of dice, forcing him to hitchhike and walk his remaining journey to St. Louis. Felix approached the...
No fucking way. He raised enough money to go fucking run the marathon. Lost all of his money in what, Louisiana? Where did they say he lost his fucking money and then he had to walk?
Starting line in a long sleeve shirt, long dark pants, street shoes, and, naturally, a beret. Hey, when you're 5 feet tall and amongst marathoners and all their short shorts, thigh glistening glory, you have to stand out somehow. A fellow Olympian felt bad and offered him scissors to cut his pants, making him some improvised shorts that bring a smile to any redneck's face. The starting pistol was fired, and the runners embarked on a course that one official called, quote, the most difficult a human being was ever asked to run over. The track consisted entirely of dirt roads and fractured stone,
Bro, and those 2 South African guys that were running that shit barefoot.
providing difficult footing, with 7 hills ranging from 100 to 300 foot verticals and long ascents. Running on public roads also made the race somewhat of a game of Frogger, with runners having to dodge trains, wagons, streetcars, and dog walkers. Not even the air was safe, with cars driving alongside the runners, kicking up dust for them to inhale. Uphill running.
They ain't close off the roads either. It was just like, hey, you're going to run a marathon through New York City right now. Just figure it out.
Dusty mouth, scorching heat. I could really go for some water.
What? Water? What are you, a pussy?
Meet James Sullivan, chief organizer of the Olympic Games. One day, James pondered a
Oh my god, did he ban them from drinking water?
question we all have from time to time. What would happen if I forcibly dehydrated someone? To study the effects of purposeful dehydration, James decided to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, planning a marathon with only a single water station on the course. A dirty well, 11 miles in.
11 miles! You get your first drink of water.
Dysentery. At the start of the race, Fred Lorse took the lead, with Thomas Hicks passing him shortly
Bro,
after.
I would just quit. Like, you're telling me people kept going? I would just give up. Like, if I was one of the people that were from the U.S. or from Missouri that, like, signed up.
One of the barefoot South Africans was chased a mile off course by wild dogs. John Lorden began vomiting profusely and gave up. William Garcia was found collapsing on the brink of death after coughing up blood in the middle of the track, hemorrhaging with a ripped stomach lining and dust-lined esophagus. Interesting. Meanwhile, Felix was
Interesting. So this is what happens when we make people run barefoot on a dirt track with rocks and don't give them water.
actually making good time, despite pausing to talk to every spectator along the track. During the race, Felix casually remembered he hadn't eaten in the past 40 hours. He then saw people in a car with some peaches and asked for one, to which they said no.
Hey, the fuck?
Later on in the race, he stumbled upon an orchard and ate some apples, which then turned out to be rotten. He then started cramping and vomiting, so he decided to lay down and take a nap. Despite all
Bro, and they still recorded his time? He took a nap after puking up rotten. How do you not know that your fucking apples are rotten? They would be mushy. Like, it would look fucked up.
odds and setbacks, Felix would actually go on to finish 4th. 9 miles
In what time? I need to know when he finished that. I need to know what his time was.
Fred Loris called it quits after cramping up, hitching a ride to the finish line and waving at bystanders and runners as he passed. Thomas Hicks started to show signs of extreme exhaustion 10 miles in, and begged his coach for water. But his coach, believing the only people who ever needed water were Aquaman and pussies, settled for sponging his mouth out with some warm distilled water. Hicks really started to break down 7 miles from the finish, which is where Dr. Charles Lucas sprung into action, giving him a mixture of strychnine and egg whites. Some call it a performance enhancer, some call it rat poison. I say it's 1904, so what's the difference?
That was rat poison?
Keep in mind, early 20th century doctors were little more than licensed murderers. The car Fred Loris was hitching broke down 19 miles in. Having recovered from his cramps, he decided to pull a sneaky and rejoin the race, passing doped-up Hicks and later the finish line in first place. Those at the stadium didn't know about Fred's disqualification, so they hailed him as the winner, and Fred played along. It even went so far that Teddy Roosevelt's daughter, Alice Roosevelt, took a
He fucking cheated?
picture with him and placed a wreath over his head. She was lowering the gold medal over his neck when a spectator stepped in. Hey, yeah, that guy was disqualified.
You suck. You're fucking disgraceful. Captain Skinny Dick. Ice cream man.
Okay, so
Oh my
I may have
God.
made that part up. I have an imagination. Sue me. The cheers turned to boos as Fred tried to play it off as a joke, claiming that he never intended to go through with it. Meanwhile, Hicks, who had lost motivation when Fred passed him, painfully picked up his pace after hearing of his disqualification. However, recently poisoned Hicks started to turn gray and limp, so they dosed him again with strychnine and egg whites.
Bro, they were feeding this man rat poison while he was running a marathon. Dude, what the fuck? This was like 120 years ago. What the fuck were people doing in 1904? This is like worse than lobotomy logic, dude. Hey, you're running a marathon. We're going to not give you water, and when you're tired, we're going to feed you rat poison. He has to die by the end of this race.
So you know how when you're watching the Olympics and think to yourself, these sports have a serious lack of alcoholism? Well, Hicks' team thought so too, so they washed the lethal drug down with some brandy. Why drink water when you can have ethanol?
They gave him alcohol.
Hicks started running mechanically, like a well-oiled machine. His face sunk, his eyes grew dim, his palms are sweaty, knees weak, arms are heavy. 20 miles in, Hicks started hallucinating, firmly believing he had another 20 miles to go. He begged his team for something to eat, but they just gave him more brandy instead. Poisoned and shit-faced, just like my 2 a.m. Taco Bell runs, Thomas Hicks swinged and shuffled his way over the final stretch, with his trainers carrying him across the finish line, where he received the gold medal. Only 14 of the original 32 runners finished the race, the worst finish ratio in Olympic history. Here's a graph of gold medal marathon times throughout history. And here's Hicks' time, a full 20.
Wow. Finish time in minutes. He finished in 220. So if this was a normal race, it would have just kept going down.
29 minutes and 8 seconds slower than the second longest winning time in history. In almost
3 hours and 28 minutes. What was his mile time? So that'd be 6, 12, 18, 208 divided by 26.2. 7.9. Bro, that's better than most of us could run. Okay, yeah, he was an Olympian, but he wasn't a pro athlete. And his mile split time was less than 8 minutes when he was running on dirt roads through traffic and was given alcohol, rat poison, and 0 water. That's insane. Half of the people in this chat probably couldn't run a mile quicker than 8 minutes, let alone his mile split being faster than that. That's fucking nuts.
45 minutes longer than the slowest finisher in the 2016 Olympic Marathon. It took 1 hour and 4 doctors for Hicks to feel well enough to just even leave the stadium, having lost 8 pounds over the course of the race.
Wow.
So if Sullivan's experiment taught us anything, it's one hell of a weight loss program. So, in conclusion, while the 1904 Olympic Marathon featured the first 2 black Olympic athletes and a Blue Jay-approved amount of alcohol, it also resulted in multiple near fatalities and resembled less of an expertly organized event and more of an Ed, Edd and Eddy scheme. 2 out of 10 stars.
That was like an Olympic race. That just seems fake. Oh my God. What do the comments say? The marathon really needs to be a movie. It's such a fun story. Actually, though, like old marathons when people just weren't trained, back when nobody was pro and they just fucking signed up and ran it. All right. Next video.